And while we get a firsthand look at the destruction here, it's important to remember that Palestinian journalists do not have this access. They have been pushed to the south. Dozens have been killed.
There's this false narrative about Palestinian journalists. More than 100 of them have been killed by Israel since the war began. And I take very few positions in the conflicts that we cover. But let this be a position that I take. Journalists, specifically Palestinian journalists, must be protected.
Powerful message coming from a source that you would least expect. That was the chief foreign correspondent. His name is Trey Yingst for Fox News. So what you watched was a snippet of a documentary that he has created for Fox Nation. So this is like the online platform for Fox. But nonetheless, I mean, when Israel loses Fox, you know they've gone too far. And in this case, I really do want to give Trey Yingst a lot of credit for drawing attention to a very serious issue. You know, journalists, the press, they are supposed to be protected so they can do their jobs and report to the rest of the world what is happening on the ground. And war reporters, these are the most legit journalists, okay? Like sometimes when people call me journalists, like I cringe because I think of war reporters. I think of people like Jeremy Scahill, who he himself used to be a war reporter. Now he has a wonderful publication called Drop Site News. Definitely check that out. He launched that with Ryan Grimm. But I think because of the fact that Yingst has seen the devastation and the destruction in Gaza, and he knows what it's like to put your life on the line to do your job, he has a special connection to this issue, and I really do want to commend him for drawing attention to it. Now, Israel's brutality toward everyone in Gaza, including the journalists, has gotten so bad that, again, they have now appeared to lose the support of some Fox figures. And Yingst is out with this new documentary, which, by the way, also shows the extent of the destruction that Israel has brought upon the tiny strip of land. Let's take a look.
There are so many neighborhoods that are flattened. Palestinians that are internally displaced will simply have no homes to return to.
The Israelis have killed journalists in drone strikes. They've killed them with small arms fire, and it's unacceptable.
It absolutely is unacceptable. And I want to give you some more details about what Palestinian journalists have been dealing with as a result of this war. Now, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists, this is not a group that is controlled by a Hamas. So rest easy that this is a credible source. They claim that 123 Palestinians, 3 Lebanese, and 2 Israeli journalists have been killed since the beginning of Israel's war in Gaza. Now, the 2 Israeli journalists were killed during the October 7th Hamas attacks. Now, in its most and by the way, they obviously should be condemned for that. Now, in its most recent report, the Committee to Protect Journalists noted that to date, CPJ has determined that at least 5 journalists were directly targeted by Israeli forces in killings, which CPJ classifies as murders. So this is not news to us. If you are a regular viewer of this show, if you're a regular listener of this show, you would not be surprised. But what should be surprising is the fact that there is an organization that's actually willing to hold Israel accountable, not for accidental journalist murders or killings, but to also call them out when it's abundantly clear that the journalists were specifically targeted. Now, more journalists have died in the course of any other year or any year since CPJ began documenting journalists' killings in 1992. So Gaza is unique. It is breaking records. CPJ is also investigating numerous unconfirmed reports of other journalists being killed, missing, detained, hurt, or threatened, and of damage to media offices and journalists' homes. And that's actually a perfect segue for what I wanted to share with you all. And it's a difficult story to share with you all when you consider the fact that this journalist was so incredibly young. But last weekend, an Israeli drone strike killed a 19-year-old journalist by the name of Hassan Hamad. He was in the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza. And one might argue, well, I mean, Hamas was probably using him as a human shield, right? I mean, that's the usual excuse that we'll hear, except the IDF had warned him that this would happen if he continued reporting on the carnage that they're causing in the Gaza Strip. And they made good on that threat. The bombing followed multiple text messages warning Hamad to stop recording images of Israel's assault on Gaza. And there's evidence of that. Let's take a look. So what you're looking at here is a tweet by Palestinian journalist Maha Husseini. Posted a photo, one of the threatening WhatsApp message that was sent to Hamad. The other image is Hamad himself. And it read as follows. Listen, if you continue spreading lies about Israel, we'll come for you next and turn your family into, this is your last warning. Now, she says that Hamad also received several calls from an Israeli officer ordering him to stop filming in Gaza. It's interesting. I mean, these threatening messages would lead one to believe that maybe all those other journalists were targeted. I mean, it seems as though Israel does not want any reporting on the ground in Gaza, which is why they're so incredibly restrictive when it comes to international journalists who want to report on the ground. And he didn't comply, and a drone strike killed him. Journalists later posted incredibly graphic footage of people picking up Hamad's remains, his body parts, and putting it on a table. I do not recommend watching it if you have a difficult time stomaching that kind of stuff. Those images are seared into my memory now. And Reuters deputy editor-in-chief Barry Malone asked a really important question. If you're a journalist and you're not speaking out in solidarity, why? Yeah, why? We know that if this were carried out by any other country, journalists would be pretty outraged. There seems to be some level of fear in calling Israel out, even when there's evidence indicating that they're targeting journalists, Palestinian journalists in Gaza. The press freedom group Reporters Without Borders, also not controlled by Hamas, just want to be clear about that, has filed multiple complaints at the International Criminal Court, whose chief prosecutor is seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and Hamas leaders alleging war crimes against journalists in Gaza. Yeah, slaughtering journalists happens to be a war crime. But this ongoing war and the United States aiding and abetting the war kind of makes a mockery out of international law, doesn't it? I mean, this war essentially dismantles that. This war and the US's support of it, of Israel's involvement in it, of Israel's military actions in it, indicate that the US government has absolutely no leg to stand on when it comes to human rights abuses, when it comes to violations of international law. I mean, who the hell is the US government to tell any other country what they can and can't do, considering what they are enabling as we speak? It's so incredibly shameful, but here we are. All right, well, let's move on to something. Actually, let's take a break. Let me get myself together. And we're gonna switch gears, talk about something entirely different. We're gonna do a story out of Chicago, which I think is important to know about because, sometimes when you see mismanagement, you just automatically assume, if you're a hyper partisan, that mismanagement is carried out by, a corporate owned politician. There's no way someone who's in favor of labor, in favor of unions can, screw up the fiscal situation in a city. It's not the case in Chicago, unfortunately.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.